Thank you for having me here today. I teach at a lot of different Unity churches, and this is the first time I've been here. And so it's always very interesting to come into a new place, because I have no idea what I'll expect or what will greet me. But I'd like to say that you have a very warm, very friendly group here. And you may not know it yourselves because you're in it, but as someone who's coming here for the first time, I can feel it. It's very palpable. So it's nice to be here. George Burns, who played God in at least 2 movies, said, "The secret of a good sermon is to have a good beginning and a good ending, and to have the 2 as close together as possible." I will do my best. The title of the lesson is The Zen Teachings of Oz. Now, when I say Zen, I don't mean Zen Buddhism in a traditional sense, but what we would really refer to as the kind of the metaphysical truth of things. The Wizard of Oz is probably one of the most beloved films we've ever had. I know it's one of my desert island films, and probably the desert island film for many of you. And one of the reasons for that is because it abounds with insights that can enlighten our minds, heal our emotions, and awaken our spirits. If you can do that, you're going to be timeless. And The Wizard of Oz is all of that. What is it? It's a story about a young girl's adventure over the rainbow. Now, what is over the rainbow? It's a metaphor for an inner journey, her inner journey and your inner journey. And that inner journey is a spiritual journey of transformation. But because it's an interior one, which is sort of invisible, we need to have something visible to look at to understand it. And so we have the story. And the film itself showcases some very key principles of healing discovered by the great Swiss psychoanalyst C.G. Jung. Maybe you're familiar with the work of Carl Jung. Yeah, wonderful. One of the things that Jung said, which is so powerful, so true, and so apparent in this movie, is that what you resist persists. Are you familiar with that idea? What you resist persists? Do you remember the reason that Dorothy left Kansas? By the way, we're talking about Dorothy, but we're talking about you also, because this is your story, and that's the reason it's so dear to you. Do you remember the reason she left Kansas? That's exactly right. She was afraid that there was this woman, a powerful woman in town named, do you remember her name, anybody?
Gulch.
That's right, Miss Gulch. This is a good group here. I make this a very interactive lesson for you today. Miss Gulch was a powerful woman, and she had Toto used to get into her garden and create difficulty for her. So she had the power, through the town authorities, to have Toto be put to sleep. And Dorothy, of course, loved Toto more than anything. So Dorothy decided, I've got to leave, I've got to escape. And the reason, of course, she had to escape was because, in simple terms, she was not at peace with Miss Gulch. She resisted Miss Gulch. And in so doing, decided she had to leave. Now, if this movie, which was set in 1939, were written today, produced today, Dorothy probably wouldn't go over the rainbow. She'd probably just go to California. But it wasn't the same in those days. So she decides that she's going to go to over the rainbow. And she, of course, sings a song that nobody could ever forget. I think we'll probably hear it here later today. Do you know that over the rainbow, when in the turn of the millennium, the polls were done by the American Film Institute, and that song was regarded as the greatest song of the 20th century. So, because of the timelessness, it's not just pretty, it's not just a pretty song, but if you listen really closely to the lyrics, you'll understand from your experience with Unity, or for those who meditate or do any kind of personal transformation work, you'll hear the essence of transformation in that song. She talks, for example, about how troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. She says, that's where you'll find me. So she's looking to transcend. She's looking to go beyond. And in her youthful imagination, it's the rainbow. But that's just an outer metaphor for the inner experience that we all can have when we transcend within ourselves. So, do you remember? So Dorothy will take us on, we'll go back here on this little journey. Remember, she goes to leave, and then she comes back because the twister gets going. She comes back to her house. They're all in the storm cellar, but she doesn't know that. She goes up to her room, falls on her bed, and she sees riding across the sky. She sees Miss Gulch riding across the sky on a bicycle. Do you remember that image? And who remembers what Miss Gulch transforms into? That's right. She transforms into someone who Dorothy will eventually see. She transforms into what we know to be the Wicked Witch of the West. So, and in fact, and of course the same character, same actress plays both roles. So what happens is, as soon as Dorothy goes over the rainbow, remember her house lands and kills the other witch's, kills the witch's sister. But what's so interesting is that she now has generated a new enemy. Before, Miss Gulch wanted to have Toto put away. Now she has a witch who wants her put away. Jung said, what you resist persists. So, even over the rainbow, for those of us who believe in past lives and future lives, even in other lifetimes, whatever we have not come to peace with will return to us. Now, you could look at that as a negative, you could also look at it as a positive, because if you can be at peace with whatever happens, then there is nothing to come back to you see. And that's really what the story is about. It's a story about the development of that higher state of consciousness that Dorothy eventually finds. So, so what is the rainbow? Over the rainbow is an interesting image, isn't it? Because the rainbow is made up of really the spectrum of white light. And Dorothy wants to therefore go over the rainbow. She really wants to, I would say she's seeking the experience of white light. And light, of course, white light, is known throughout so many spiritual traditions as being, you know, an expression of the divine. Jesus said, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. So Dorothy is really seeking that, even though it's not explained in that way. You know, the story, the movie, was based, of course, on a children's book that was written in 1900 by Frank Baum. Let me tell you some interesting things about that. That book grew out of children's bedtime stories that he used to tell his sons. He had many sons, no daughters. He had about 8 sons, I think. And every night he would tell them a story before going to bed. And he started this story about a young girl in Kansas, and they loved it so much they'd say, Dad, tell us more about it. And he kept evolving more and more. The needs of the time, so to speak, brought out from him this story that was in him, but he didn't quite know it. And it all kind of came out as The Wizard of Oz as we know it today. And Frank Baum was a member of the Theosophical Society in Chicago. And I don't know if you know much about the Theosophical Society, but think of it as a first cousin of Unity. It really is. Their mission, I'm quoting now from their website, their mission is to encourage open-minded inquiry into world religions, philosophy, science, and the arts in order to understand the wisdom of the ages, respect the unity of all life, and help people explore spiritual self-transformation. That could be on your website too, pretty much. So Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, this is the vision of life he had. So it's as if one of you wrote this story. And that's one of the reasons why I believe this story has such a deep impact on people, because it came from a very deep place, and it contains so many deep spiritual truths.